guys, I'm Amanda, the Botanical Brunette, and welcome to my channel. If you're looking for an easy to care for trailing houseplant that's not a pothos, look no further than the Hoya. I did a Hoya collection a year ago. Like, my Hoya collection has completely changed since that video. I don't even remember how many Hoyas I had in that video, but I feel like I have expanded my Hoya collection since that video. So I wanted to share with you guys the Hoyas that I have in my collection. I probably have more Hoyas in my collection than I have any other plant species, which is kind of crazy. I never thought of myself as like a Hoya collector. Let me show you all the Hoyas. I'm gonna give you guys some care tips on like what I've been doing with these Hoyas, basically where they live and my watering routines and all that stuff. And I'll also let you know how long I've had them. So let's get into it. Let's see all the Hoyas I have in my collection. Just to make this video kind of fun, I'm gonna show you my oldest Hoya to my newest Hoya. So that way you guys can see like the differences between the growth and everything like that. Except maybe this one. This is my first Hoya I ever got, and that is a Crimson Queen. So this trailing Hoya is pretty long, honestly. I did lose a lot of cuttings. So this actually used to be a 6-inch pot. I actually had it where my Brazil is hanging right now. I had it in a planter, it loved it in there, it was doing super well, and then it just wound up kind of dying off, I guess. It kind of root rotted, and I have a few cuttings right now that are in my prop box that I'm hopefully going to revive, but this is just like, honestly, like those leaves right there are just what everybody loves about a Crimson Queen. They're just so pretty. Like, their waxy leaves are just, it's honestly so gorgeous. Now I have this plant hanging, like I said, in this window, which is facing southeast, and I noticed, I took a picture of it and I thought it was just like a different variegation of the Crimson Queen, but out came a Crimson Princess randomly. Out of the plant came a Crimson Princess. I don't know if that's a normal thing that happens, like just randomly sprouted another species. So I wound up actually cutting this off and I created a completely new plant, and I decided to pot them together since they're sisters. The same plant but different. But the Crimson Princess, like, don't mind the soil on the leaves. I actually just repotted this like not long ago. Look at those leaves, like, oh, so beautiful. And the stems are pink, which is really cute, I think. Like, I don't know if the camera will pick that up really well, but like the stems are pink. Like, that's really cool. Versus this, like those are pink that come out, but this isn't pink. Like, this is not pink. So I'm assuming that's a Crimson Princess. Like, I don't really know what else it would be. So both of these Hoyas sit again in my southeast facing window. I had it on my plant shelf on the top shelf where it doesn't get any grow light, and I don't think it liked that. So I wound up moving it into my southeast facing window so it sits in another hanging planter. I figured it was happy there in my room, like in here, so it should be just as happy in the plant room. And I'm already starting to notice some kind of like growth coming from it. This one, not yet. I did chop this one and tried to propagate it because it got really long. And that one is one of the ones that are propagating in the prop box. So this is just honestly like such a gorgeous Hoya to add to your collection. I've had this Hoya for I think 2 years. I know I don't really have a lot to show for it. It was a lot bigger, but you know, Hoyas don't honestly, like, they're beautiful and everything like that, but most Hoyas, at least for me, I found don't grow very fast. They don't grow very fast. They're very slow growers. This one did kind of take off in the window and I messed it all up when I moved it, but hopefully it will adjust back into the window area and it will grow again. I would say I fertilize my Hoyas, really all of them, every other watering in the summer. So twice a month I water them. And then in the fall and winter, I kind of do once a month. I know that a lot of people do the spray. So they have like an orchid spray that you can fertilize your leaves. That's actually good because it will promote flowers. So flowers will kind of emerge from your Hoyas. That's kind of the trick that people like to do with that. I have not tried it yet. I just haven't thought to buy it and try it out. But I've had some little flowers start to emerge, but even without that. So, but that is my Hoya Crimson Queen and Crimson Princess. So the next Hoya that I have in my collection, that is one of my older Hoyas, is this Hoya Chelsea. Again, not a lot to show for it, but it is super cute and super pretty. So this Hoya Chelsea came from that Crimson Princess. This sprouted randomly, like just randomly kind of came out. So I took it and I had it in that planter with all of them. I was like, let me just put all those Hoyas together because they wanted to be together. And I root rotted it a little bit. So we're left with this. It's got healthy roots now and it's really like really happy. The leaves on them are really tough. I don't know if you guys do this with Hoya care, but people do the taco test, which is basically folding your leaves in like a taco. If you can easily kind of do that, then they need water. The leaves will also indicate that they need water if they're also kind of thin and veiny. I don't know if you guys noticed that with my Crimson Queen, it's a little thin and veiny. It is still recovering from root rot, so we're, you know, kind of working on it, but this one is completely happy and healthy. I have this under my grow lights. I just took it, like I said, I just repotted that Crimson Queen and Crimson Princess. So I just pulled this out of the pot and revived it. So I only have had this on under my grow lights for a couple of weeks, honestly, and it's doing pretty well so far. I haven't had any new growth and I don't really see any trying to grow out, but again, Hoyas are kind of slow growers, so hopefully by next year, when I do another update video, that we'll have a little bit of a bigger Hoya Chelsea. I had some good success with those Hoyas, so I decided to get another Hoya, and this Hoya is actually probably my favorite out of all my Hoyas. I have two that I really love, and this is one of them. This is my Hoya Bella. You guys probably saw these, really all three of these in my last Hoya video, and how beautifully and splashy these leaves are. Like, guys, this is such a pretty Hoya. This Hoya does grow pretty slow. I have noticed that it does grow really slow, and it does give you these little things. With the runners, a lot of people say to cut the runners off and discard them. I keep them on my plants because they do all have nodes and they will eventually grow buds. So I don't know if you guys can see that. There's a little bud on there. They're annoying and kind of wonky and like whatever. You can cut them off and propagate them. I have heard, and I actually have tried it myself, where you cut them off and you put them in water and they start to grow leaves better that way. I like to keep them attached. This is kind of wonky and weird because it is actually hitting the top of my plant shelf. It's actually kind of reaching for the grow lights, which is weird. This Splashy Hoya is my absolute favorite. Like, it has to be one of my absolute favorite Hoyas. I got this Hoya for really cheap on Etsy. It came as like a little cutting, and now I have like, I think I have like I don't even think you guys can see that, but I think I have like 4 actual plants in here that have, you know, I propagated them and put them in there to kind of make them a bigger and bushier Hoya. But this Hoya is just super happy, super like pretty and just wild. Like, she's my wild child. Like, I love this plant so much. A lot of people refer to Hoyas as like a sort of a succulent-like plant because they don't need a ton of water. I know that I said with my Crimson Queen that I fertilize that every like 2 times a month. Sometimes I only ever fertilize them. Sometimes I don't need to water in between. Like, I watered this plant like 2 weeks ago and the soil's still really damp. So really just check on your Hoyas and see if they need water. They're really okay with drying out. Like I said, you do the taco test with them and you can kind of feel if they need water. And they'll bounce right back once you give them water. I put all my Hoyas in like a sandy, really loose, like really well draining soil. That way the water can just kind of drain out. But also putting a little bit of moss and coco coir in there just to kind of maintain some moisture, because they do like a little bit of moisture. They don't like it completely just draining out. If you're an overwaterer, you're gonna have a hard time. But if you're an underwaterer, you're gonna have a they're gonna have a happy Hoya, because they don't really care too much if you let them go. Like I said, once you water them, they'll bounce right back. So this is my Crimson Queen and my like absolute favorite Hoya. So the next Hoya that I have is one of my faster growing Hoyas, and that is this Hoya Lunaris. So long and beautiful Hoya Linearis. This little green bean Hoya is just so easy. I have this in my southeast facing window. This just, it honestly just like, it's so beautiful. It like showers over all of my plants and everything. It's just so pretty. Like, it's just one of my absolute favorite Hoyas. We do have a couple little dry pieces here. So I do need to water it. But I like, this is just, I mean, I can't even describe how beautiful this is, because you guys see, I mean, it's one of my favorite Hoyas because it's just kind of a low-key Hoya that doesn't really need a lot. So like all the Hoyas really on this list, this Hoya doesn't need a ton of love. So I do find out that this Hoya does dry out a little bit more than my other Hoyas due to the fact that it sits in my southeast window, really next to the Hoya Crimson Queen and Princess. So I do find the only thing with this Hoya that I don't love is if it dries out a little too much, it will sprinkle the little petals everywhere. So you can probably see here that this stem needs to be watered. I mean, honestly, this whole plant needs to be watered, but you'll kind of see that it needs to be watered by the stems will kind of tightly close around. The leaves will kind of tightly close around the stems like that. And that's an indication that it just is thirsty, it needs water. You can't do the taco test with this kind of plant just because it's not a wax plant. It doesn't have those waxy thick leaves. It has like more of like these little green bean leaves. I really don't know why this is a Hoya, because it kind of reminds me more of like a string plant. But it's honestly like, see, like it keeps dropping these little stems, so it's definitely overdue for some watering. But it's so easy to propagate. Really, any of the Hoyas that I have on this list are easy to propagate. It's really like just such a good plant to add to your collection. I got this from Gabriella Plants last year and it was very, very small. I spent like $30 on like, I'm not even kidding you, like probably like that. Like it was so small and so like kind of, I don't know, I was a little underwhelmed for $30. My husband thought it was crazy, but this plant has rewarded me so much that it's just, I honestly don't even look back. And I've got a lot of like new growth that kind of comes out of this plant, and it actually is in a little, this actually was a candle jar that I put a little drainage hole in, and it's got a unicorn on it, but I flip it just so it's kind of like this. And in my window, when you're out in like my pool area, you can see the unicorn. It's kind of funny. So that is my Hoya Linearis, this beautiful, lush, leafy boy. So the next Hoya that I have is this Hoya Bella. This beautiful Hoya Bella, like, and it's getting so long. Like, I love this plant so much. This is in my like gold 3-tier planter, so it just looks so pretty, just kind of like trailing over the gold planter. And you may notice that it's in a small planter. The Hoya Bella root system is so small. Like, I've had this plant for about a year and the root system on it is really healthy, but it's tiny. Like, it's so small. The Lunaris is kind of the same way. It has like a smaller root system, which is kind of funny, like seeing how long these plants get. I actually have to, because that gold planter is like a 6-inch planter, I have to put like a grower pot on it so it can sit on top so it can like be steady. But this Hoya Bella was a plant that I also got on Etsy, and it has just rewarded me with so much growth. I actually only had, like I said with my Lunaris, I bought it for a little less than my Lunaris, but I bought it for like just like 2 little cuttings like that. And then it kind of just sprouted more leaves as it grew, and it's just super happy and just super beautiful. This Hoya is a Hoya that has given me the most growth. Other than my Lunaris, this Hoya has blown up since you guys probably last seen it, and that is this Hoya Polyneura. Look how big it's gotten. I recently got this plant and it was just these 2 leaves. Just these 2 leaves, and I'm like, oh, that's cute, whatever, little tail. And then these have just, it's just sprouted so much. It's so pretty, and the splashy leaves on here are so pretty. Like, oh, this is just such a perfect Hoya. Like, it grows so well, it grows fast. It is really honestly probably my least picky Hoya, probably because I care for it probably better than all my other Hoyas, just because I love it so much. This is my second favorite, if you guys have not noticed. But it's just so pretty, and I cannot wait for it to trail. Like, I cannot wait for it to like trail all over. It sits on my top shelf, actually right next to my Pelicanics, and it's just like, oh, I was honestly amazed on how fast this Hoya grows, because last year it was very hard to find. This Hoya was like either really expensive or like I could not find a cutting, and it propagated really well, it grew really well. Basically what I've been doing for it is I find myself watering it more often, so I water it every like 8 to 10 days and kind of just water it enough to get the water through. It's got a lot of perlite in the soil, so it kind of is pretty fast draining. But other than that, it's just kind of basic plant care. Like, really, just not really anything crazy. I thought at one point it was growing which I may have just cut it off. So it does have a little spot right here, very small, that could potentially be a flower. So I'm being hopeful, and I'm just just kind of keeping an eye on it, making sure that it stays watered and it's super happy. Also keeping up with fertilizing it. Like I had mentioned before with my other Hoyas, I do want to get that orchid spray and I want to just test it out. I know that a lot of people swear by it and that's like the way that they've gotten their Hoyas to bloom. But I have not had a Hoya bloom. I've had so many pinnacles kind of come out, but I have not had any blooms. So hopefully that will be a bloom that I can share with you guys. I think I may have ripped one off because it's like white. You can see like the thing. But totally fine. It's all right. But honestly, this like Hoya is constantly putting out new growth. I mean, you can see like right here, like it's got another little new growth coming in. Here, it's got another little new growth coming in. I mean, it's constantly spitting out new leaves. So an easy Hoya that will, you know, give you a lot of reward. I have noticed that it's still pretty expensive. It's still pretty expensive to find these Hoyas, but if you're gonna learn anything from this video, or you're gonna learn anything from this plant, go ahead and just buy the 2-leaf cutting, because eventually you're gonna get a lot more plant. I mean, I've only had this for a few months and this is what I've gotten so far. So that's, you know, kind of worth the money. And then the last Hoya that I have is this Hoya Wayadi. So I showed this in one of my plant hauls a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, and it really hasn't grown that much. It's grown a little bit here and there, but it hasn't grown too much. It is kind of starting to give me like runners, which is fine, because like I said with my Pulacanics, they will grow leaves hopefully eventually. I haven't had any runners other than the one in the Pulacanics so far that haven't given me any new leaves, so I'm staying hopeful for that. I actually had this in a gold planter like that you guys saw in that plant haul. I did actually wind up moving it just because I put a golden pothos in that golden planter just because it was in a lower light area, and I wound up actually putting this in my plant room in the 3-tiered planter that the Hoya Bella lives in. So hopefully we'll get some new growth with that just because the Hoya Bella has been pretty happy in that spot. But I really don't have a lot, I mean, new information with like Hoya care, but the leaves on it are just, they're just so pretty. Like the leaves on them are just like, the long like jungly leaves. I love like bright green plants. Like I love like just like this color green plants. Like I said in a couple of my videos, sometimes I kind of lean more towards like a non-variegated versus a variegated just because they're just easier. But this is like such a pretty plant, and I'm really excited for it to grow and just to see where we're at next year. So that's my Hoya collection. Those are the Hoyas that fill my home and fill my heart. I absolutely want to get more Hoyas. I love Hoyas. They're just so easy. They really are. And I'm a huge fan of trailing plants. So really easy trailing plants are just my kryptonite. Like I absolutely love them. So let me know in the comments if there are any Hoyas that I don't have on my list that you're like, girl, you need to get these Hoyas. Let me know in the comments below. I've heard a lot of people be very anti-Hoya. Not really sure why. I have had Hoyas in my collection from basically the beginning. I mean, I've had that Crimson Queen for, I want to say I've had that Crimson Queen for maybe 3 years. Thinking about it, I think I got it in 2019. So it's been a while since I've had that. And I know that I don't have a lot to show for it just because I've had issues in the past. You know, I was a chronic overwaterer for a while, and that lived through that phase of my life. So that, you know, I'm just kind of reviving it from that. Other than that, it's just like, Hoyas are just really good to add to your collection. They're just really good trailing plants. They are very easy because they don't need a ton of water, and when they do need water, they'll tell you that they need water, which is the best thing. And they can be propagated easy if you wind up overwatering them. And I can attest to that. Well, that's it for today. I hope you guys all have a great day and stay botanical.